Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we jump into this upload, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and it does matter. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's second half. Shall we? Today's first experience. I've got two unsettling experiences. Both occurred in central North Carolina. I live in the boonies, so there's lots of pastures and woodland. The first one came when I was a young teenager wrestling with a recent death of a sibling and extraordinarily angry. My home life was not stable. I spent a lot of time in the woods when things got bad. I even spent the night outside when I didn't feel safe inside. The forest around my home was essentially my second home, and I had no fear wandering around for hours in the dark. After the most violent argument to date at home, I decided to take off into the woods for the night. I left the house early and went into the woods, the angriest I had ever been. I remember I ended up screaming, crying, punching at trees for a while until it clicked in my head that there was no more sound. North Carolina summers don't exist without the screaming of every kind of insect at all hours of the day. From there, I noticed an encroaching foul odor. I followed the dead animal smell like hello country living, and this is like that, but so much more intense. And also sweet. Dread started to set in, and as I turned to start to walk back home, my instincts were screaming at me to run, so I did. I was a chunky teen, and running was not in my wheelhouse, but I was running quickly enough that I crossed the several acres to our property in what felt like seconds. The entire time running up to crossing the property line, I heard something keeping pace with me from behind. I couldn't see anything from the deck, but I did hear heavy footfalls in the distance. The odor went with them. After that night, I never felt safe in the woods. I never went back into them, and if I had to be outside at night, every outdoor light was on, and I stayed far from the tree line. The next event occurred roughly 5 years later, still a teen, less angry, and still in the country. Left for college and work one morning. Crossed this dead doe in the middle of the road, one that turned onto a road I lived on, less than a quarter of a mile away. That required I drive partially in the ditch to avoid from hitting her. Not an uncommon sight, but I made note of it since I would be coming back at night, and if no one had been by to move her, I ran the risk of startling and hitting any nighttime scavengers in the road. The day was normal other than an unusual late shift at work courtesy of a surprise inventory. By the time I left, it was nearly 1 a.m. and raining. I took my time coming up on where I knew the doe had been and caught some eye shine on the left. Figured it was a stray animal or a fox taking advantage of an easy meal, and glanced in the side view mirror while I passed. It made eye contact with me in my mirror and went from what I know certain was a crouch to standing in an instant, and it was tall. I'm dead certain of it. The head looked canine with orangish eye shine, the upper body all matted down with rain. It was too dark for me to see much other than that, and I was driving really quickly. The same odor from the previous experience was in my car. That same dread had me taking the turn that took me away from my home and into a 40-minute detour I ended up calling my parents and begging them to turn the outdoor lights on for me and booked it to the door once I was home. I never took that road to or from work after that. I've not encountered that odor again, especially in the woods around my home. Still feel like they don't want me there at best. At worst, the tingle of dread will keep me from venturing too far in. Where I live now, more city than country. What little woodland exists in my immediate area is so thick with homes that any negativity feels weak and muted. I'm not sure what I'm expecting out of sharing this, but I've never told anyone out of fear that I'd be ridiculed for saying some kind of demon chased me into the woods and I saw something that looked like a werewolf chowing down on some roadkill. Tonight's second encounter. I've dealt with the paranormal side ever since I could remember, but this is a story that happened in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. My wife and I moved in sometime in September of 2014. We bought a home at auction and it needed a lot of work. The home was built in 1969 and it was all original to the date, even down to the shag carpets. The house sat on 12 acres with only 3 acres cleared around the home other than some random trees, but the rest was fully wooded. The basement was gross and musty. The ceilings were low in places with pipes and ductwork running throughout. It had an odd, strange feeling when walking down there. The previous owner left a deep freezer, and what they had inside of it made me question the things they were doing in this basement. The freezer was full of different animal carcasses that had been stripped of meat, random bone pieces with bits of fur still attached. There was also a gallon bucket sitting there full of blood. Our very first night staying there, my brother and sister decided to stay over with us. We were all hanging out anyway, and it got late. They decided to stay. While we were there, we were unpacking boxes and decorating for Halloween. I started walking the empty boxes and totes down to the basement, and while down there, something caught my eye. I saw what looked like a slim box sitting on top of some ductwork. I walked over and pulled the box down, and sure enough, it was an old 1970s Ouija board. Not thinking too much about it, I grabbed it and brought it upstairs and sat in our dining room. That night, it was getting late. We were all getting tired. It had to have been maybe midnight. We decided to head up to the second floor and go to bed. All the beds were dispersed on the second floor. My wife and I took the master bedroom. My brother and sister took rooms off of their own. We lied there, trying to doze off, when suddenly we heard what sounded like closet doors sliding and slamming shut, and the sound of running and stomping back and forth in the hallway. My wife had to get me up to tell my brother and sister to stop what they were doing. We were trying to sleep. I get up and go to each of their rooms and ask, "What are you guys doing?" "We're trying to sleep." And their words were, "We thought it was you guys." I decided to grab my gun, thinking, okay, maybe someone had broken in. I slowly walked downstairs, clearing each room as I went along. My wife, brother, and sister followed behind with a gun of their own. We cleared every room, and there was no one in the house. Suddenly it dawned on my sister. It's the Ouija board. I quickly grabbed it from the hutch cabinet and took it back to the basement. It was silent for the rest of that night. As time went on, the spirit was making itself known. We would have to block the basement door shut because we'd be constantly finding it open. Anytime we had to go down to the basement, we felt a presence, and it was demonic. We were hearing it walk up the second floor, walking around our bedrooms. Doors would randomly slam shut. Lights would surge randomly. I began seeing dark shadow figures. It wasn't just any spirit. It was a dark spirit. It felt demonic. I felt like I was losing my mind. Voices were constantly in my head. Sometimes they were whispers. Other times they were louder, but often sounded muffled. I could never make out what they were saying, but it was all the time. The only time the voices were not in my head was when I wasn't home. We had chickens and sheep that died for no reason. All of our vehicles constantly had problems, including our mower. One day I was putting laundry away. I had the windows open to catch the summer breeze because our HVAC didn't work very well, and I heard strange sounds, so I looked out the window and listened. It was coming from the right side inside the woods. It got closer and closer, and that's when I saw it. It was either a hellhound or a werewolf walking through our front yard and disappearing into the woods on the other side. I was so shocked to see it. One random night we were watching a movie and the light surged and we heard the basement door slowly open. I jumped up and wedged the door shut with a chair. Another night I walked past the basement door to find it open, no lights on, and I hear my wife down there calling my name. I thought it was strange, so I didn't walk down there. I then heard walking above me. I slowly walk upstairs to the second floor. I make my way up the stairs and turn the corner to find my wife in our room. I told her how I heard her voice calling my name in the basement. What did it wasn't me down there. I wasn't in the basement, she said. The presence continued, and it was making us feel on edge. Tired, I was hardly sleeping. I tossed and turned, and the voices grew louder and louder yet. I never could make out what they were saying. After a few years, we decided to put the house up for sale. My father-in-law was over helping work on a few things before the house hit the market. While he was there, doors slamming shut and voices started to enter his mind. He even said he couldn't make it out what they were saying. Eventually, we moved out and the voices went away. Tonight's third encounter. I was 18 when this took place. It was the winter of 2015. It's not particularly scary, though. I sure was terrified when it happened. I was on a logging road south of Swan Lake, Montana, sort of near Beaver Creek, I believe. There was a decent amount of snow on the ground. I was visiting home, Swan Lake, Montana, for a couple of days, and my little sister, 17, and I wanted to go for a drive and listen to music. So we drive for a good 20 minutes away to find this back road and pull off a good distance from the main road so no one would see us. It was pitch black out and in winter, so it was dead silent at night. It was eerie, especially out in the boonies like that. I left my headlights on because I had this creepy feeling like we were being watched, but just figured it was a deer or something. I'd seen moose on this road before, so I knew it was busy. My sister and I were having a conversation when I looked out into the trees, and I swear I saw this emaciated, pale, white humanoid type thing just barely trying to hide behind some trees. It was still in the darkness beyond my headlights, so it kind of melted into the shadows. I stared at it for a long time. My sister was involved with something she was talking about, so she was oblivious to my change in mood. I couldn't take my eyes off it. It had this misshaped head that was too big for its thin body, and its eyes were two huge, black, unblinking marbles. It didn't move or do anything, so I kind of told myself it was just something I was seeing in the shadows. It was just beyond the light enough that I could write it off that easily, I guess. I went back to talking to my sister for a while and decided to see if I could still see the shape of the creature in the shadows, and the next time I looked up it was closer, now just at the edge of the light. I felt so scared, my eyes filled with tears. It was sort of hunched to the right side and was standing with this rounded back and its bony, weird hands in a claw shape. I had pulled into the beginning of a single-lane road that was plowed 10 feet in. There was no room for me to turn around, so I had to back out. I made the terrible mistake of just gunning it backward. Every time I kept looking back, it was closer and closer. I ripped the plastic covering off the driver's side mirror, almost hitting a tree in my rush. I hate to say that I left it there. I was too scared to stop and pick it up. Sorry, Mother Nature. My sister never saw the thing. She was super confused about why I randomly decided to get quiet and then book it out. We drove for a while longer, but I didn't pull off anywhere. I still felt really creeped out. It took me a while to get comfortable going into the woods alone or driving down the back roads alone at night. I definitely still have no clue of what this thing was. It wasn't some confused hiker wandering around naked, but it had the upright body of a person. Looked kind of like those Dover demon sketches, but I was between Swan Lake and Seeley Lake, Montana, and it was white and ashen. Tonight's fourth encounter. So this happened a couple of nights ago. Me and my friends decided to hang out that night. One of them dares us to go to a graveyard near us. I had terrible experiences with the paranormal in the past. I had a no paranormal or scary stuff at night rule. I didn't like talking about anything scary or dealing with paranormal stuff at night. It made me paranoid and scared. Anyways, I was hesitant and refused, but she said I was just scared, which was absolutely true. She ended up finally convincing me. This graveyard is in our town. Had a space in the gate where you could slip through. We slipped through it, and I instantly felt chills up my spine. It was very cold. I mean, it was night, but the cold air was unsettling. I asked them if we could go, and they refused. They said they wanted to explore and started joking about ghosts. Great. I was starting to get very paranoid that something paranormal would attack us, and I was staring in every direction. I do that when I'm scared. We start walking through the graveyard. Suddenly, I see something by the gravestones, and I am not joking with you. It was squatted down like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. It had an animal-like face, and its body did not look human. I told my friends about it, but they did not see it. I turned around and wanted to go home. Then we hear this deep growl and glare at each other. It makes us freeze in this place. We hear it again, and we dash out of the graveyard, never to return. We get back to my house. We're just shocked and wondering what that growl was. I told them that I saw this demon-like creature by a gravestone, and they believed me. They said after hearing that growl, they now believe in the paranormal. The growl did not sound like that of an animal, and it made every hair on our bodies raise. It sounded paranormal, like a demon's growl. How do I know? Because I've had encounters with demons. It was the most terrifying encounter of my life. Now, they listen to me when I mention no paranormal or scary stuff at night rule. Tonight's final encounter. I had totally forgotten that this had happened until my mom brought it up at dinner tonight. And it's 9:30 now, and I'm scared all over again. This was back in high school, either my freshman or sophomore year. I had missed the bus and didn't have a car at the time, so my mom had to drive me to school. The road my tiny neighborhood, more like a glorified cul-de-sac, was off of was a long rural stretch that only had one equally tiny other neighborhood and a few houses here and there. It was 6 in the morning or something, and it was still dark outside. It was colder than a witch's tit. As we pulled out of our neighborhood, my mom and I both saw these 3 children in blue and white private school uniforms standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder at the entrance of our neighborhood on the sidewalk. It was either 2 girls and 1 boy or 2 boys and 1 girl. I don't remember the ratio, but the girl, I swear, had a blue and white skirt or dress outfit, and the boy wore a blue short-sleeved shirt and khaki shorts. This was weird for a few reasons. One, it was 40 degrees outside. They looked like they were dressed for summer, and they didn't even have coats or anything. Secondly, there were 2 schools in the area, but not a private school till the next town over, and blue and white weren't the school uniform's colors. Third, what young kids just stand there in a single file line, not doing anything but standing. No joshing around, no nothing. Yeah, right. Lastly, this wasn't where the bus stop was. It was a few blocks down. Just a sprinkle of extra creepy on the top for shits and giggles. There weren't any street lights. They were just standing in the dark, not doing jack, except being creepy as hell, I guess. They were on the corner on the right, closest to the passenger side, where I was obviously sitting. And of course, we were turning right. As we got closer, I thought at first they didn't have faces, but it was just too shadowy and dark out. The headlights only shone under their shoulders, which is how I can remember the outfit so vividly. Then we got closer and I was relieved to see they had faces, but then got completely freaked out all over again when I saw their eyes were black, like Supernatural Sam and Dean fighting demons all black. My mom saw their eyes before I did and put the pedal to the metal and hightail it out of there. I remember trying to look back and see them, but I couldn't since it was too dark. My mom didn't go back home till the sun rose, and it was bright enough not to be scared. Of course, nobody believed me at school, and my siblings thought we were full of it. But we know what we saw. We never saw them again after that. I thought they were ghosts, but a few months after I heard about the black-eyed children, we moved shortly after that, due to an unrelated reason. This was 3, maybe 4 years ago, and I had blissfully forgotten about it until my mom brought it up, saying, "Hey, remember when?" And now I want to die. I hope my irrational anxiety and fear around children that are small enough for me to punt across a soccer field is amusing, at least. Wow. 22 minutes long, but I just want to say this was an absolute great compile of terrifying encounters. You've got Dogman, you've got black-eyed kids, you've got Ouija boards, you've got Dogman with Ouija boards. It just doesn't get even creepier. Demons, come on now, Dover demons in Montana. This was a good upload. I liked it. I hope you guys did, but if you didn't, oh well, I still liked it. With that, I hope you all have a safe evening. May the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that, well, we call life.